we're gonna have a.
I guess we don't. That's fine.
That's fine. Let's just do it. Why not? Belt and suspenders here, man.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's get started.
Yeah. Do you want me to lead this?
Sure.
All right. This is the first one I've led. So here we go. So we have your age. That's check number one. Now, can you just give us your name, your position,
Sure.
Which part of Metro you represent, and your bio?
Yeah, sure. My name is Christine Lewis. I serve on Metro Council representing District 2, the communities of the southern part of the region. So I have a little bit of deep southwest Portland in through Lake Oswego and West Lynn, Oregon City, Gladstone, Milwaukee, a little bit of Happy Valley, and a bunch of unincorporated Clackamas County. It's a great district. I think it's the best district. It's the only metro district that it incorporates at least a little bit of all three counties.
Is that right?
About 80 voters in Washington County. But yeah, I'm mostly the Clackamas County representative at the Metro Council, and have been doing this work now for, 2018 was my election, so I'm 3.5 years in.
Okay.
Coming into this work, I have a background as a policy analyst and have worked in communications. Immediately prior to being on council, I worked at BOLI, the Bureau of Labor and Industries, doing labor lobbying essentially on behalf of the state agency, but have also worked at the state and local levels, both for government and as an advocate.
Okay. And are you from Oregon?
I'm not. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Moved here in 2003, attended college here. And
Which one?
Reed College.
Oh yeah, I saw that in your bio. Yeah. What'd you study?
I studied anthropology.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Isn't there a great anthro course or professor there?
There are several greats. You might be thinking of Paul Silverstein.
That might be it.
Maybe Rupert Stash, who's no longer at Reed, but we have a close tie to the Chicago school, and there's obviously a lot of notorious folks there.
Interesting. What brought you to Reed?
I was interested in leaving Texas. I was interested in a liberal arts campus. In high school, I was a big robotics nerd. I was on the robotics team, so I knew I wanted a school that had strong sciences, but I also knew that I needed to have the arts, the creative community. So when I got to Reed, I was just as interested in the sciences. I started out as a physics major, actually got certified and worked at the nuclear reactor. All of that was really interesting to me. I decided I didn't want to spend most of my time staring into a computer, and I was more interested in the social sciences, econ and anthro. Econ I didn't figure out would have been my kind of main pull until too late to get that major in 4 years. And as somebody economically minded, I knew I needed to get in and get out in 4 years. Wasn't going to pay for an extra semester. But anthropology was a great discipline to study under as well.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
What year did you graduate?
07.
07, okay. Have you seen what the latest down at Reed, the protests?
I have, yeah. I've been following it pretty carefully.
What do you make of that?
I think it's a hard situation. It's a school that has given a lot of power over to the professors. The professors pretty much run the place, and now it's a question of how they sanction one of their own, and they have a process, and it's going to be long. And in today's society, we don't have a lot of patience for a long process. But it's what's true.
Yeah. You mean the professors as opposed to the administrators run the show? Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's two committees, the Committee on Advancement and Tenure, and the other one is like the Committee on what courses and what majors are awarded. And that's like 14 professors out of 150 that basically have these very high level kind of executive function committee positions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us about your work on Metro since you've been there. What have you been focused on? What have you accomplished?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I'm going to talk about scandal at Reed. I'm really proud of what I've done at Metro. I think first and foremost, I came in wanting to represent my district. Clackamas County has, at the regional level, for far too long been left behind. So I came in saying I'm going to be a bulldog for making sure Clackamas County not only gets its share of investment, but also Clackamas County can really see itself reflected in how policies play out. We've got a small city like Gladstone. How's a policy that Metro passes going to play out in a small city like Gladstone that is also at the same time playing out in a city like Portland? We've got to make sure that our policy options are designed so that they don't have adverse effects on the small and mid-sized cities, which I often am the person at the table representing. So the policies the policy areas I've really dug in on are housing, transportation, parks, and frankly some of our work on the economy and making sure that we're creating a region of prosperity.
What's been your housing work?
So I serve on the oversight committee for the bond. I'm the liaison for the bond and for the supportive housing services, which means that I get to attend every month. And the oversight committee is an independent group. It's not full of elected folks, but I'm the one listening and bringing back ideas to council, and also just helping make sure that the staff are on track for coming up with like the innovations and the places we need to push them. And frankly, when it was time to refer the ballot measure for supportive housing services, it was a bunch of advocates coming in. It was the 3 counties coming in. I tried to dig in as much as I could to make sure that Metro could get what it needed out of that measure. One change that I did make, for instance, was the advocates came in and said, you're going to have a tax, and here's your tax structure. And we had to make a change that said, if you have a business tax and a personal income tax for those folks who who have closely held companies, we want to make sure that there's no double taxation. So we proactively went out and made sure that we had that policy shift.
So if you were an individual who had an LLC?
Yeah, that you only paid once through your LLC and not again as a business or other way around.
I see. And that was something you had to do?
That was something Metro Council
you.
had to write a policy on.
Yeah. How do you feel about how, I saw the piece in the Oregonian today about, talking a lot about, some accomplishments. How are you feeling it's going so far?
Overall, I think I'm really happy with the progress that we've made at Metro on housing. I think the biggest win, honestly, is on the bond side, where we are far outpacing our expectations. And when you look at the housing crisis, it's multifaceted. It's a supply and demand issue. It's also folks who have had a breakdown in human connection. And you're not going to solve the homeless crisis without enough supply, and you're not going to solve the homeless crisis without enough folks who can help reestablish connection on a one-on-one level.
So we were just talking about this. So so being you're ahead of plan on the. I've read some of that. What are the stats that make you ahead of plan?
Yeah, so we promised 3,900 units to voters, and we have at this point committed about half of the resources. And so committed those resources doesn't necessarily mean the money's out the door, but it means that project's in pre-development. And in order to get those units, we've, in order to project out how many units we're going to get, we're getting more than half the units for half the money spent.
Wait, hold it. You're getting more than, say that again, you're getting?
So we're getting, 3,900 divided by 2 is like what, just short of 2,000.
Yeah.
We're getting more than that 2,000 number from half the money spent. So if we continue to spend money at the same rate, we're going to beat that number.
So you're saying you're coming in under budget?
Yes.
And what about the timing? Are we on track to get the units built? Was there a time commitment?
Yeah, we committed to do this in about the next 8 years, and we're on track to do that. Okay. We have 3 or 4 buildings that are already open with tenants moving in. I went to a groundbreaking 2 weeks ago in Happy Valley for the Good Shepherd project. That's going to be Happy Valley's first ever affordable housing development. So the ground is breaking there. I have in Gladstone 45 units of senior housing that people are going to move into this summer. And so we've got 30 projects in the pipeline that, those are all definitely going to be open within the next 2 to 3 years.
For a total of?
And I'm not going to give you that number, I'll follow up.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so Nigel, do you want to ask your question about private versus public housing?
Sure. Yeah, Christine, you just referenced, the importance of supply and it's great that Metro's ahead of schedule, but I think we all know that affordable housing alone won't solve the problem. So to what degree can Metro incentivize the development of market rate or unsubsidized housing, which will have the effect, over the long term of filtering and creating naturally affordable housing?
Yeah.
And what specifically is Metro doing to help incentivize private development?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in order to get the number of units that we're going to need, it's all hands on deck, and government subsidized affordable housing is a small piece of that pie. So in terms of what Metro can do to make market rate development more attractive or more readily available, one of the biggest things is just making sure that cities are in coordination on how to implement some of these new laws. Obviously, we have this middle housing that's come down, and we have to make sure that cities are able to implement that, because that's going to mean more ADUs, more dense housing. So a lot that used to have 1 unit could now have 4 units. Not necessarily all of those are going to be truly affordable, but they're going to be, more likely to be affordable to, middle to high income earners. The opportunity to bring in new land for housing is upon us. We have an application for River Terrace 2 in Tigard, and that's about 500 acres of new housing lands that's been applied for to Metro. And we're in a mid-cycle review process, which is the first time ever that we've gone through mid-cycle review, and I think it's a fresh and new opportunity.
What's mid-cycle mean?
Mid-cycle means that we're off of our normal 6-year cycle that's been set in land use law.
For expanding.
For looking at the UGB and looking at our industrial and our housing needs.
So is this because there's we're in crisis that they?
Yeah, the state gave us a mid-cycle review just a few years ago.
So, Christine, historically, Clackamas County generally has been a little bit hostile to Metro relative to the other 2 Metro counties, and I think in the most recent quarterly report of the housing bond, that Clackamas County is doing less than Washington and Multnomah counties. Is that correct?
They are doing less, but I would judge Clackamas County right now by their rate of acceleration, not their rate of performance. Traditionally, Clackamas County year over year has spent about $8 million total on anything having to do with homeless services. And the need there is still great. That exact report you're referring to says we have 660 some people who are on the street chronically homeless with an average of 5 years on the street. There's another 2,900 folks in Clackamas County who are struggling with homelessness, who maybe haven't been homeless for 5 years, but maybe 1 year. So there's still a need there, and the $8 million just pales in comparison to what the other 2 counties spend, where they spend tens and hundreds of millions. So Clackamas County has really accelerated. As long as they continue to accelerate, I think they'll be doing their part in terms of some of the challenges that they faced in implementing the measure. They have not been able to scale up with their internal staff. They have also been behind the other 2 counties on allocating essentially advance money, because as you know, these 2 taxes are just starting to come in now because nobody really wakes up in the morning on the day after tax filing day and wants to file their taxes for the next year. So as personal income taxes are coming due, we're seeing the majority of the funds coming in last month, this month, next month. So that's really the opportunity to kind of be an equalizer, since Clackamas County didn't advance themselves as much money as the other 2 counties.
Interesting.
For some legitimate and maybe not other legitimate reasons.
So what is Metro's, you've recently approved this sort of oversight mechanism for the housing services bond, and not to be unkind about it, but in a way this is kind of classic cartel behavior, in that Clackamas County or any county has an incentive not to do as much, so that the burden falls more on the other counties. If Clackamas County doesn't spend its money or doesn't move aggressively on homeless services, people will come to Multnomah County and Washington County for services. So how do you as Metro, with the oversight function that you have, how do you encourage Clackamas County, the county, and also the individual cities within Clackamas County to move aggressively on this front?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I don't think that there's a lack of will for the cities in my county to move aggressively. Unlike the city of Portland's relationship with Multnomah County, where they receive almost direct allocation through the joint office, my cities are doing what they can, often with only 1 FTE. Many times that's somebody who also has another job or is embedded within a police department. So I want to hold my cities separate from the county, because the cities, I see them hustling. With the county, I do think we have to hold them to the standards that they set in their goals in the local implementation plan. That was a plan that was written by folks in Clackamas, in consultation with people who live in Clackamas and provide services in Clackamas. It was approved by their board, and that's the metrics we have to hold them to. and how we hold them to it. I think that in the IGA we have that we just signed, I think it was January, it could have been December, but the IGA has just been signed for a few months. That does give us the opportunity, if a county isn't performing, to contract for that county's work through the other two counties.
What lesson did you take away from the defeat of the Metro Transportation Bond?
There were a bunch of lessons there. I think the biggest lesson that I took away was that the opportunity to kind of set an open table was neglected. We needed to have set an open revenue raising table. We set a very intentional process on how we were going to pick our investments, but we worked too tightly within a box of the constraints we thought we had in terms of the revenue options. And some of those constraints are real. The state doesn't let us do certain revenue raising mechanisms. We could go ask the state, we could partner with the state. And we were too constrained with what revenue we were looking at from the start, and we were not able to pivot or frankly even hear outside of ourselves as we entered a different kind of economy, as we were in a public health crisis.
Should we ask, even though your opponent's not here, how you contrast from your opponent?
I don't know her. I've not yet had the opportunity to meet her, so I think that's a bit unfair.
I'm sorry. I didn't know. I don't know.
I show up. Like, if you invite me to something, I show up.
And you haven't seen her?
No.
At all?
No.
Okay. All right.
I know
That's
the same
end of that.
things you know about her, because I also have Google and I also have access to the county voters pamphlet.
And that's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Christine, we've written a little bit about, and I know you guys heard last week, I think you approved the plan to spend the money that was written, the $475 million open space and parks measure, that there are people in the community in all three counties who are frustrated at the pace of expenditure of that money. Can you address that?
Sure. I share in some of that frustration. And I want to say that when we initially passed the measure, I was like, okay, here we go. And then I learned about the refinement process. And I think refinement's really, is great because we have a lot of opportunity for folks who know very specific pieces of land, very specific watersheds, to be able to give public input. We received thousands of comments, particularly from the mountain bike community, about what trails they find most interesting or challenging. So yeah, we have to give time for all of that. But yeah, we absolutely need to be going at a faster clip. One of the programs that I advocated we prioritize from within the measure was the local share program. It's 19-point-something% of the measure that gets divided up basically per population for all of the parks providers, and they get to spend those funds. And we had several of those parks providers that were very eager to get going. So we prioritized getting that program out the door. It was the first program fully through the refinement, fully ready to be on the street. And frankly, Gresham was the city that bit first, and they purchased the Shoal property, and that was a great tool that they had available. But I'm surprised not to see more of the local governments having taken advantage of that program being finished and kind of first out the gate. And I guess I'll take some responsibility for having advocated that be one of the first ones, because I want to be a good partner with our local governments, and they're able to do kind of more flexible work quickly. But yeah, I think we absolutely need to be out there now that we've approved our plan, purchasing, protecting.
If we could come back to the homeless services measure for a moment, I spoke to an advocate recently who said that the distribution formula doesn't make sense. And I said, what do you mean? And this person said, well, funds are distributed per capita or per population to the three counties rather than per head of people needing services. In other words, and this person said to me that means that Multnomah County is getting far less per homeless person than the other two counties, and it's a very big difference. Is that accurate? And if so, have you looked at it?
It's close. So we actually aren't doing it per head or per person. We're doing it, money raised in a county goes back to that county. So slightly different than per head, because obviously some places are going to have fewer heads paying more dollars. And I think that that's something that the counties wanted. Frankly, that Clackamas County, it was a big deal for them. If they're going to have their taxpayers pay in, they need to see it in their local community. And I think you're right that does mean that there will be more dollars per head of homeless person who needs service in Clackamas County than Multnomah County. But based on the background of years of the solution to helping you if you're homeless in Clackamas County is a bus ticket into downtown Portland, I think it's worth it.
Anthony, you had a question on that front, I think.
Yeah, so when I talk to my friends, all good liberals living in Portland, I often hear that they say, well, is Portland doing the right thing with money spent on homeless services and housing, or are we attracting homeless people from other places because of these services? Do you have a view on that? Yeah, so in kind of casual speak, that's called the magnet myth. If you're going to provide better services, people are going to come to you. And that's borne out not to be true. Yes, people may be attracted to move into the core of the city if the core of the city is the only place to provide services, but people are not going to move from Idaho to go be homeless in Portland. I've volunteered multiple years now for our point in time count, where I've gone and stood with a clipboard at my designated spot, and I've talked to homeless people. I've asked them the PSU approved questions, and why did you move here? When did you move here? Where did you move here from? People move here for all the right and the same reasons I moved here, to have better education, to be closer to family, for a job that they were promised, and then they become homeless. So absolutely, we're going to have some folks who aren't native Oregonians who are homeless, but they're part of our community. And if they're moving into the core or into Metro to get better services than they can get in Silverton or in Canby, then that's a problem that we need to work with the state to make sure that Canby and Silverton also have services. But I think it's a localized magnet myth. It's not like people are going to move here again. So it's got a name. So it's got a name. People have addressed this.
Yeah, and people have studied it. Yeah,
and it just doesn't exist that somebody's moving here from.
Again, people are going to move here for reasons that are not to get homeless services. People are going to move here because they hear there's a job, or they're homeless in Salt Lake City and they say, I got a cousin who lives in Portland. I'm going to cousin and I'm going to go live at their house. They live in the house for 3 weeks and they're not a good roommate. Then they might go back to being homeless here. But people don't move here just for the services.
Yeah. What do you say to people who, and we drove through Boise last summer, and you drive around Boise and there's no tent cities, there's no, it's just in a few, but it just looks so much different.
Yeah.
And there's this book out now called San Francisco, and I've heard about it, but there's some problems with the data in there, so I think you have to take that with a grain of salt. But why does Boise look the way it does and we look the way we do?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think the ability, if you're a service provider in Boise, to walk around with a $700 voucher and find a unit is far more available than here. I think the other thing is we are a city that's known to be compassionate and fairly liberal and live and let live. And so for far too long, there have been people who have just been allowed to live how they want to live. And that kind of compassion doesn't exist everywhere.
Wait, so I'm sorry, did you say for far too long we've been?
Yeah, for far too long we've let some folks continue to struggle on the street. And I think that we absolutely need to have more assertive engagement, talking to folks who are living on the street. But assertive engagement does not mean sweeps.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of a carrot and a little bit of a stick in there.
Yeah.
What's the carrot and what's the stick in that?
Yeah, I think the carrot is we can help you find the permanent housing that you need. The carrot can also be, what are the breakdowns in your life and what services do you want for those? And then the stick is, frankly, we absolutely have to have a cleaner society, and about half the trash that is out there in big dumps is coming from households. We know because of what it is.
Wait, half
half the trash in these big dumps that our teams pick up
yeah,
is coming
yeah.
from households,
The
like
dumps.
you or me, right? But the other half is coming from camps.
So wait, does that mean households are dumping? Households are dumping their trash in the street?
Yes.
So that brings up another, this is
We'll
going
go
back-
there later. We'll go there
Okay,
later.
I want to talk about that.
But
yeah.
we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah.
about half the trash is coming from camps, and we have to be better about cleaning those up. So people cannot just continue to have junk accumulate on the street.
Yeah, go ahead. I think I know the answer to this, but what did you make of People for Portland's, their repeated efforts? Now, what do we? They've got two initiatives they've
Yeah.
tried, and now they're suing.
Yeah.
I suspect you don't agree with their what they're proposing, but is there any merit there?
I don't think so. I think a lot of what they want we're already doing. There's kind of 4 tenets of what they're proposing. One is that you're going to spend some of this money on shelter. We're already spending some of this money on shelter, and frankly, in places like Washington and Clackamas County, far more of that money is going to shelter. I'm sorry, hold on.
Oh no, you're fine. This happened to me in the last one.
Oh, good. It's not just me. The second thing they want is for oversight. We have a transparent oversight process. And frankly, the concern that they have around conflicts, we don't have anybody on our current board who's profiting off of this measure, right? Everybody's there because they represent the philanthropic community, they're business owners. They're there because they care. And then finally, this notion that anybody can just sue the government. It's borrowed from the playbook of Texas. That's not really how we negotiate when we have breakdowns right now in our civic society. So I do think that there's opportunity to better communicate what it is we're doing. But again, we're only 2 quarters, just now 3 quarters into a 10-year program trying to solve a long-standing problem. And I don't think changing it right now is going to be helpful to anybody.
Because it's early.
It's early.
It's early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything on that, Nigel? On People for Portland?
No, nothing to add on that.
Okay. So let's turn to the trash. This is a near
trash.
and dear. I go out and pick up trash on the weekends, many weekends.
Adopt One Block?
Sorry?
Are you an Adopt One Blocker?
No, we go through Solve.
Okay.
Or we go Gorilla.
Nice.
And just a lot of times we just end up on Alberta Street, but sometimes we'll go to the traffic interchanges just because you get this immense feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Because you can hammer it out there. And then we take the stuff to the dump and we pay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this breakdown. Do you think half of the trash that's in the street is coming from households, people who are not homeless?
So we have the RID team, which is if you report a dump, at this point they'll be out there within 2 to 3 days, and they'll collect everything and take it away. And about half of what they collect, they say, are items that are coming from households. A homeless person doesn't have a lamp, they don't have a place to plug it in. So when they're picking up things like lamps, that's somebody dumping from their apartment, either because the apartment doesn't have appropriate bulky waste, they don't have a truck, they can't take it, they can't haul it themselves, or the rates at Metro or any of the disposal sites are too high.
So somebody wrote in an opinion piece in the Oregonian, should the dump be free?
I mean, it has public costs, right? We pay a lot. Yeah.
Believe me.
And as we've had rate setting discussions this year, I have actually made it a priority that we don't raise the minimum fee, because I had staff proposing that we raise that minimum fee, which, to be clear, has already been raised once during my tenure at Metro.
Is that the $27 or whatever?
Yeah, it used to be 28, and now
What is it?
Now it's 33, and they were talking about raising it higher.
So if I go out with my Subaru with a bunch of stuff in the back,
no matter what, you're paying that $33.
it's 33 now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I thought it was. I guess I was just there recently, but anyway. So it's 33. It was
28, I believe.
Okay.
You might have
that's
been right with that 27.
Okay, well, anyway, so
yeah.
but it's gone up once since you've been, and you've resisted the raising it again.
Yeah.
And they wanted to raise it just because budget.
Because of how they do the metrics, they basically say, if you're a self-hauler, you're going to pay for what time and space you take. And self-haul is our most expensive customer to serve because we are slow, we don't go there every day, so we need some traffic directions. The most efficient customer to serve is our commercial haulers.
Who just show up and
They
know where to
show
go.
up, they got it passed, they already know
Yeah.
where they're going,
Yeah.
right? So our self-hauls need, lots of tender love and care. Okay, this is where you back up, this is, and that costs money. And so it basically says if we have, say you have 100 self-haulers and it costs $100, every self-hauler is going to pay a dollar. And so that's where we get the kind of metrics from. But the question is, how much of that is a public purpose, and can we essentially subsidize that? And I'm on the side of keep that rate as low as possible.
Because is that $33 or whatever it happens to be now is a real impediment to having. That's what's causing some people to dump the shit or dump the stuff in the in the street.
Yeah, it's expensive, or they don't have. You and I have a Subaru.
Yeah,
and
right,
so when we got something
right.
big, put in the back. If you just had a bike,
Yeah.
you got something big.
Right.
You're not getting penalized in the city for dumping. We don't have enough police. You see them running around doing what they're doing. They're not going to penalize you for dumping.
So what's the solution there?
I'm with you that potentially free dump or free dump days. The biggest solution is going to be to increase our access to bulky waste collection. In other parts of this country, as part of the franchise operation, franchisees have to do bulky waste at the curb. And I've been very vocal. I'm getting some briefings. In the next couple of years, I hope we roll out a better bulky waste system.
Wait, in other parts of the country, there are bulky waste days?
Yeah.
Like you can put
It's like in Dallas, Texas, it's called
dishwasher out there?
Big Pickup Day. And you get a postcard at the beginning of the year, and it's like, here are your big pickup days. And yeah, if you got a dishwasher, if you've got a couch, it's like, okay, so if my garbage day is Friday, but this is the special big pickup day. In addition to rolling my can out there, I put my dishwasher out there and it's gone, just like my regular trash. And it's part of your franchise fee.
Is that the rule rather than the exception, you think, across the country?
I'm not smart enough to know the rule versus
Yeah.
the exception.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Right?
And there
You
might
should
be
do
other
that.
good ideas too, but we gotta have them all on the table and we gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
Because and this is not just a Portland problem, this is the whole region.
Yeah, I know.
I've got an apartment complex in West Lynn that changed owners, and the tenants were able to stay while the owner transition happened, but the initial owner turned off garbage collection, and the next owner didn't turn back on garbage collection for 3 weeks. So there was a 3-week gap where trash just at the dumpster accumulated. And technically not illegal. Maybe West Lynn should have intervened earlier that those folks didn't have services, but now you got this big bulky waste problem.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge that we need to face.
Yeah. There's a story about that dumpster out there that's similarly Kafka-esque.
Yeah, and
about certified letters and
that one's a commercial dumpster, which means you have a whole different set of rules. I mean,
Right.
the commercial versus multifamily versus individual,
Yeah.
it's all different systems. Yeah.
Do you have a view on Ridwell?
I have a little bit of a view on Ridwell. I think that they're doing good work in trying to raise people's awareness that so much of what is hitting our trash stream could actually be recyclable if there was a market. I do question how much there's actually a market out there that's buying what they're collecting versus they're collecting some stuff that they can then turn around and donate. And so people are paying monthly for the privilege of donating their stuff. But I do absolutely believe that the company needed to have been more proactive in going to DEQ. They resisted a DEQ permit for a long time, which is what held them up with our permit and has them, frankly, in some difficult places working with some of our counties and local governments around franchise rights.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've read in our publication.
Yes, Sophie wrote a great story. She did really good work there.
Yeah. Oh, good. All right, I think that's a lot. I've asked this question of a lot of people, and because you talk to people and they don't want to come to Portland, or they that's the one thing that strikes them.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be this green-minded place, and my God, you come here and you're like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, it really affects people's moods.
Yeah, and you can take your thin film to the grocery store, and you can take your styrofoam to Agilux.
Yeah, I've done that.
But at that point, you've got 17 bins in your garage, and you're having to remember which one you're taking where. So I get paying for the privilege, but I also don't want it to turn out that only privileged people who can pay $15 a month have access to these services we should challenge our franchise operations to do better at collecting some of these.
Yeah. Nigel, you got anything else?
No, I think we're out of time here.
Oh, are we? Okay.
Oh,
That was
shoot.
fast.
Yeah.
What else? You got anything else on your mind?
No? I came in just ready to answer your questions.
Yeah. No, this is great. We have to ask you our fun question.
Oh, fun.
If you were an animal. No. We've been asking people, like, is there something that happened that told you that the worst of the pandemic was over? Was there an event that you were like, oh, we might just make it, and you did something that gave you joy? Like, one of our editors loves to go to the Blazers. He got to go to the Blazers without wearing a mask. He didn't have to sit there and freak out about getting sick. Is there something like that just you're like, whoa, this is nice? And I'll tell you, our preface to this question has changed over the last 2 weeks with the numbers doing what they're doing. It's like, but was there a moment, like, there was a window of hope? I don't even remember last summer, the window of hope.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So you're talking to a mom of a toddler, and I still don't have access to that 0 to 5 vaccine. So while the world is changing, I feel like I'm also needing to give voice to the fact that there's a bunch of us who still feel a little left behind because our kiddos don't have the vaccine.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Anything at all, though? I guess we can't really, then that really...
I mean, last September, I did get on an airplane, and I traveled, and I went to see a friend, and that felt normal.
Yeah, where'd you go?
I went to DC.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a long trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mask on the whole time?
Mask on the whole time.
But it still felt...
It still felt like, it felt incredibly normal once I was there. Yeah.
Once you were there?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that fits the bill.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have like any shining light on the hill.
No, I was trying to think of what mine would be. Yeah, I had one in my head, but actually we went to the, this was safe, but did you hear about the Winter Light Festival that Portland does?
Yeah.
And would you dance with the headphones on at night? That was so cool.
I love the Winter Light Festival.
It was so wonderful. Yes. And we were outside, so you could have done that during COVID.
That's
but,
right. Well, if only if only we had understood that science earlier, I think we would have,
Oh my God.
had so much more access to fun things.
Yeah. Remember wiping down your groceries with Lysol?
I do.
Yeah.
That's laughable at this point, but we didn't know anything.
We didn't know anything. And we were making, my wife and I and a bunch of people we were making PPE out of garbage bags and something else we were sewing together. I can't remember what. But that was a dark time.
Yeah, I do remember the trip to the store that I made wearing goggles because I read somewhere that maybe this was getting in through our eyes. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christine.
Yep, thank you. Good to see you.
All right, you care. See you, Anthony.
See ya.